The South Carolina legislative session is coming to an end this week. Today, I talk one-on-one with State Senator Ed Sutton about the tort reform bill and the controversy over State Treasurer Curtis Loftis for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. South Carolina State Senator Ed Sutton, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, thanks for having me. And I lost track. I can't remember this is my fifth time or so on here. And I always enjoy taking time out to chat about all things Charleston with you.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. And needless to say, you are the state senator representing the 20th district of South Carolina. And you just obviously were elected to that seat back in November. And there's so much going on right now, as you know, particularly in Columbia, in the State House. And let me go right to what's been the big topic right now, particularly in the food and beverage industry, and that is the tort reform bill. As you know, the South Carolina Senate passed the tort reform bill after 4 weeks of debate. And I want to go back to March 27th, and this is coming from WIS. A bill that aims to make South Carolina's legal system fairer has cleared a huge hurdle after months of fights, weeks of debates, and many hours of closed-door negotiations. Supporters believe the legislation will ultimately help South Carolinians save money on insurance costs, while others argue it is a helping hand for insurance companies and not to their customers. After 4 weeks of debates and several hours of backroom discussions on that particular Wednesday, senators finally approved their tort reform bill Wednesday night, officially passing it on Thursday. The Senate tort reform bill, that is, concerns how to determine that is, who's at fault in lawsuits and how many plaintiffs are due. Supporters claim their aim is to fix an unfair and broken civil justice system. But ultimately, this bill, as you know, won an overwhelming majority of the body, which passed 35-7. So let me ask you this, Senator. When you look back at March to right now, what is the biggest difference about this particular bill?
Yes, the biggest difference is the House has a different idea how to solve the problem, which is pretty standard up there. Not only in Columbia, same thing happens in D.C. Is the Senate will pursue one solution, the House will pursue a different solution, and kind of the difference here. And by the way, my position at this point is all the above. I don't care whose solution passes. We just got to pass. We got 3 days left. We got to pass a solution. And we can come back, next year and do, continue to work on this. But this is such a massive issue, not just to Charleston, and obviously I represent the tourism epicenter in our state, but this is a problem that affects every county in South Carolina. But what we have between the two bills is you have 244, which is the Senate version, and then House 3497, which is the House version. The House version is definitely more narrowly focused on the liquor liability issue by itself. The Senate bill is much broader and encompasses several different industries as it relates to joint and several. Now, like you mentioned, when we got to our final version, and it took longer than, it was on their full floor for 4 weeks, but a lot of work was done in committees in the previous year on that as well. But when that passed, when that bill passed, you had trial attorneys voting for it. This is again 244. You had insurance agents voting for it. You had people like myself that are small business owners. You had a good cross section of different professions that supported that bill. So to me, that was a sign of we reached a good compromise on 244, and that final product that we had there back in March, that was very different than what we started with in January. That bill looked entirely different. Now, the House has it in their chamber now. My understanding this week will be sending us back a version that looks absolutely nothing like 244. It looks a lot more like their 3497 bill, so more narrowly focused on the liquor liability aspect of that. Now, again, my position at this point, since we're so late in the game, is we got to pass it. If we do not do something with liquor liability, this epidemic of bars and restaurants closing because they can't afford the insurance rate, that will continue on until next year. And we just can't have that. This has been a crisis that really kind of started bubbling up 3 years ago. And every year it's gotten worse and worse. And you see the same headlines that I do about restaurants like the Brew Cellar or Local 616. There's just one in Columbia that announced if they don't get a solution within a month, they're closing up shop. So this is a very much an immediate issue that we've got to address. So, and I'll say, at least I'm thankful as a new guy up there. I don't have the long-term interest. I don't care who wins the House or the Senate. Is the people that need to win here are the people of South Carolina, and forget about what chamber brought the bill that ultimately passes.
Let me ask you this, and I really want to jump into some really good questions here in just a second. But what part of the House bill, Senator, do you wish the Senate actually adopted early on?
So with the House bill, what portion of that? I do think that one thing I'll say is really good about the House bill is it included additional penalties for DUI offenses, right? And we have one of the weakest DUI laws in the country, and that also has a direct impact on insurance rates. Insurance carriers, that's a part of the data set that they look at is one, DUI rates, and also the laws, which directly the logic there, stricter laws, less more accountability for people that break the law. So I do appreciate that out of the House bill. Now, I will say, this is where I'm going to get real nerd and nuanced with you. One thing the House bill does is when it directly impacts minimum coverage, right? So in 2017, before I was there, the legislator made a decision. We're going to require every bar, restaurant in the state to cover a minimum of $1 million coverage limit on their policy, right? Well, I'll just be frank, in my district, there's some places where that makes sense. On King Street, right? Like Hall's Chop House. They're going to have $1 million policy, maybe a little bit more because they've got a lot of assets. But when you're talking about like your dive bars, or in my case, if you go out to a more exterior West Ashley, kind of that neighborhood bar, they probably don't have $1 million asset. Especially when you start talking about VFWs and American Legions, which were some of the first people to feel the pressure here on this issue. In my mind, there's no reason for those organizations to carry a $1 million policy. So what the House bill does is it steps it down. There's an incentive. If you close before midnight, you get a little bit of reprieve. If you do safe serve, you get a little bit of reprieve. What I fought for on the Senate version was a flat $500,000 instead of doing $1 million. Now, again, you can carry more if you have more than $500,000 assets. You can certainly carry more insurance. We're not going to prevent people from doing that, but a minimum, especially when we're talking about statewide. I'm thinking of like places like Anderson County, Oconee County, like some of these smaller towns. Like, again, those mom and pop restaurants, there's no reason for them to carry $1 million policy. So the version we pushed out of the Senate was a flat $500,000. It was actually $300,000 for 501c. Again, your VFW and American Legions. I think in the compromise, we'll probably see the House version went out there, but that is one piece that I'm totally fine with next year going back and revisiting with it. And here's the thing too, that folks following wrong with this debate. We pass. Hopefully we get to the finish line. We still got some work to do in the next 3 days. If we pass something and it doesn't drop rates, this issue ain't done. We need to come back. I'm also a fan of looking at what more we need to do on the insurance side, as far as forcing companies to show their math and being fair to people that have to carry policies. But just because we pass something, if it doesn't do what we intended to do, this issue is not over, and we will be back on it.
I have to obviously go sidestep just a second, but I want to ask you this question, and it might be a silly question, Senator, but do you wish the Senate would have taken up, say, for instance, the DUI law first before doing this?
Yes, and so I'm a co-sponsor. There's so many bills that go through my mind every day, so don't hold me exact, but I think it's S52, I want to say, along with Senator Davis and Buford. I'm a co-sponsor of that legislation. That bill has not really gotten much movement this session. So yeah, I would like to see, because that bill, that's a standalone DUI bill in the Senate, I would like to see us get that out of our chamber and over to the House this year, but unfortunately that did not happen.
And I know that you propose an idea of obviously allowing most of these mom and pop stores to have at least $500,000 when it comes to insurance. Why do you think the Senate didn't agree to that?
Well, the Senate did. So the Senate, that was part of the 244 that we passed back in March. The House did not. So my understanding is the House is probably going to stick with their language where they have all these. And I'll just be honest, I'm a fan of making things simple. Less regulations and the better. So the Senate version again is multiple step downs. So again, incentives to close before midnight, safe serve. Wait, both bills have safe serve in there, so that's another good thing that I think we both agree on. But I'm a fan of, hey, let's just make it simple. Let's just have one flat rate for the minimum coverage.
What exactly is that minimum coverage?
So right now it's $1 million, and what we proposed in the Senate version is to do take it down to 500,000, and again leave the door open. If you want to carry more, you can absolutely carry more. But I think what we're going to see the final version, in this, we'll call it the compromise, will be more of that step down, which is closely mirrors the 3497 original House version.
And Senator, what is the average liquor liability insurance premium costs for restaurants and bars in South Carolina for the past decade?
Well, I can tell you what it is right now, and it's too damn high. There's no question about that. So if you were paying $7,000 3 years ago, you're probably paying $70,000. That's kind of the anecdotal. What I've seen and talking with bar and restaurant owners is that in the last 3 years, there's been a tenfold increase in the premiums.
And how does that highlight, say, for instance, the percentage increase or decrease year over year?
Well, again, tenfold over 3 years, so that's a pretty big jump year to year. And then, yeah, if you're a small business, that's just one piece that you're so right. So they're also, you're dealing with rising labor costs. You're dealing with inflation, so your materials are costing more. Your insurance just totally skyrockets. So yeah, it's putting pressure. Not only people having to make the decision to close their business, you're also seeing people not even try to attempt to open bars and restaurants now because the costs are too out of balance. So that's, and again, my district, I've got more bars and restaurants and hotels in district than any other state senator in the state. So it is a massive, and I don't even say personal issue for me that we get something passed here in the remaining 3 days of session.
This is probably a redundant question, Senator, but how then do you actually protect citizens' rights with this particular bill over corporate profits?
Sure, absolutely. And so, yeah, the other part that's been is like, yeah, so if you are injured from a bad operator, what is your recourse, right? So very fair question that's been asked throughout this process. The first thing to talk about in our Senate version, I don't know what will come out in the final compromise, but if you are not in the Senate version we passed was safe serve, right? So if you're not in compliance with safe serve, first time offense for that establishment is going to be $1,000 fine. I think, don't hold me exactly right, but I think the second time is a $5,000 fine. Third time is you get your liquor liability license suspended. So we definitely, and which there's no mandate at this point. So that would be a new addition. There was no mandate for safe serve. Now, some insurance companies will give you a discount if you do that, but this is the first time the state of South Carolina has mandated that, and also putting penalties if you're not in compliance there. The other thing, portion of it too is, yeah, absolutely. Like if you're injured by a bar, a bad operator, you should absolutely have the ability to go back and, say, for example, if they overserve and seek recourse there. So we have left the door open for that if and the key language I think you're going to see in both these, or in the final compromise, but it was variations of this. If a establishment is serving somebody who is visibly intoxicated, at this point, they are liable for that. And that's not even on our books right now. Like right now, it's just totally, there's not defined whatsoever. So there's also wide decisions being made here by juries because that portion of it is not defined. So we're putting in that line. If a bar or restaurant serves somebody who is visibly intoxicated, then they're liable at that point.
Do you believe that will come in that final compromise from the House?
I think so. I think that defining with that liability line, my understanding at this point is that that will be there in this, we'll call it the compromise here at the end of session.
And for those people, well, let's talk about those penalties for those who don't compromise. What exactly are those?
Are you talking about as far as say if you have a bad actor out there that overserves somebody? So it depends. It depends, quite frankly, what the damages are. And so, yeah, the scenario, what kind of injury is involved there. So just that's kind of by a case-by-case basis.
And with the liquor component of this particular bill, Senator, from my understanding, the idea is obviously to protect customers, but does this almost zero tolerance policy proposal. Does this basically remove personal responsibility from the equation?
I don't think it does. That's always a discussion is, how much individual responsibility is bared by somebody. But no, I don't think it removes personal responsibility from the equation.
And isn't it true that this particular bill allows insurance companies to delay settling claims for a long time, often exceeding what would we actually say reasonable?
Yeah, so great question. And that was with the original 244. That was something that was brought up in a very rightfully so negative light. So the original bill had, I think it was up to 10 months that insurance companies could respond. And that was removed. And the March final version of 244, that 10-month was, because that was, quite frankly, I don't know who put that in there originally, but that was absurd. I've had to file insurance claims. People that have why on earth would we give them 10 months to respond? But thankfully, that was removed out of it. And I highly doubt you're going to see that coming back from the House. That 10-month window given to insurance companies to respond.
What should be the ideal limit
on time? I would say 45 days would somewhere between 45 and 60. And I think it also just depends on the complexity of the claim there as well. But yeah, 10 months is totally absurd. But it's a company, they need some time to research, get their ducks in a row. And I think, and I'll also say this wasn't necessarily an area of expertise of my bill. I think what was happening is insurance companies were getting demand letters from attorneys and saying you have 48 hours to respond. So I think that's why they put that window in there, that 10 month, which again was totally absurd. And what we passed had no timeline set for that. So that scenario of insurance companies getting 2 weeks or 2-day demand letters, that can still happen, but that discretion, if that insurance company is acting in bad faith, that discretion will fall to a judge at this point. So that whole portion about time limits, got removed entirely.
I know it's already passed and everything, but let me ask you this from a hypothetical standpoint. What about those attorneys asking for those demands? Should they be given a time limit?
Again, I think if they're acting unreasonable, I think at this point, the scenario we have or the system we have it is working in that sense. I think most judges are going to look at like a 48-hour demand letter or like something. I think most judges are going to look at that and be like, no, we're not going to go down this route. So I think that's part of, and again, that wasn't an area of the bill that I was, I could by any means say I was a subject matter expert on, but what I do know is that portion was removed.
And hypothetically speaking, again, Senator, would medical malpractice rates drop, but general liability and all auto insurance rates remain the same under this particular bill?
So my understanding is the final version we're going to get is not going to is going to be mostly focused on liquor liability. Now, one of the things that we did do going back to in 244 we passed in March is minimum coverages for auto insurance has not been updated in over 20 years. The current limit was $25,000. That was phased to go up with time because that adjustment hasn't happened in over 20 years. So I felt like doing a time phase was fair for that. So those minimum coverage policies on auto insurance in our version and March version that was passed would go up. Therefore, yeah, absolutely, premiums would come up. I don't think it would be astronomical by any means with that, but having and we all know especially the last 5 years, $25,000 and go as long as far as it once used to. So we did feel as a body that was fair to raise the minimum auto limits that were set in place over 20 years ago.
Now, when you think about this bill again, going back from March to right now, is this bill an insurance reform or is it really a tort reform bill?
Man, the 244 is everything. And that's why it was so controversial. It was omnibus is the right technical term to use for it. It touched, all kinds of things. So it's all the above.
I hate to ask this, Senator, but how does this bill support or how is it supported by the United States Constitution or the state's constitution?
Oh man, you're going to have to get a constitutional lawyer. I'm a business guy. Now, obviously, everything when you pass bigger bills like this, will they be challenged in court? Yeah, absolutely. With that, but thankfully, we've got a really good staff up there in the Senate. That's decades upon decades of experience. So they're pretty upfront with us. If we're writing laws or legislation that is likely will be overturned in court, they're frank with us about how to structure it and language wise. But again, I'm not an attorney, so I can't tell you the direct tie. But I will say that all of this has been thoroughly, certainly vetted. Now, that to say there's sections I don't like about, but the Senate version is we messed with, and my understanding it's not going to happen in the compromise, but we messed with underinsured policies and the mandate there, which I did not agree with. But anyway, the ask for me to explain the direct constitutional tie, I'm just the wrong person that they answer that question.
And with those particular situations there. Are there any violations in this bill?
Again, I based on everything I understand from the staff and portion, there is not. Will there be a challenge? Absolutely. There usually is with bigger bills, but I can't point to anything that say, hey, this is directly out of line with our state or U.S. Constitution.
Quickly, let me turn over to Curtis Loftis, and this is coming from WCCB in Charlotte. Republican South Carolina's Treasurer Curtis Loftis appears to likely stay in office for at least the rest of the year. The Republican-dominated House has decided not to take up a resolution passed by the Senate to kick Loftis out of the office because of his alleged role in the $1.8 billion account that showed up on the state's books, but had barely any real money in it and a failure to report it to lawmakers for years, according to WCCB. The Senate sent the resolution to remove Loftis to the House on April 21st, but House Speaker Merrill Smith says there isn't just enough time to take up before the session ends later this week. Loftis said this in a statement, quote, "I am grateful for the House leadership's decision today to choose the people's business over political theater. I feel sure that South Carolinians are thankful that they are the first priority and political games are not. I'm ready to turn my focus back to doing the people's work," unquote. Was the Senate doing the people's business, or was this actual political theater?
Oh, the people's business all day long. And hey, here's the top line. Curtis can't count. And his office knew about this issue in 2016. That is documented in the outside audit that is backed up by emails sent between his office, the comptroller's office, the audit. They all knew this problem or were aware of this problem in 2016. His deputy treasurer even said that it would be corrected in 2017. She stated that it would be corrected in fiscal year 2018, and it never was. So the kind of the piece with that trial that I honed in on is going back, and he claims this is all public record. He didn't know about it in 2023. So that's a 7-year gap. So one or two things happen there, right? One, he's lying to us, which I think he is, and covered it up for 7 years. So that's a problem. Or he just doesn't have a good handle on his office. And for 7 years, there's a $1.8 billion error on the books he didn't know about. Either one of those, that's grounds for removal. You should not. Hey, listen, if I'm running a restaurant and my accountant, the books are off by like $18,000, they're probably getting fired. That's a lot of money. $1.8 billion, that affects our state credit rating. That is a massive amount of money. And then just this week, our state inspector general announced that his office is under investigation. Right. And Curtis is a cancer to our state's treasury. And that situation is still there, by the way. He still has not fixed that problem. So until he is removed, until he's gone, our state finances are in jeopardy because he is more interested. One of the things he said, he was sending out text messages prior to his hearing in the Senate that the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move conservative judges. I don't know if he's looked at the numbers, but Republicans got a majority in the Senate and the House. So removing conservative, what does that have to do with his role? I mean, he's just straight up there lying to people. He's lying through his teeth to people. The guy cannot be trusted. So I think you may see an amendment to the sine die resolution saying, yes, House, you can take up the Curtis impeachment after sine die, but that guy's got to go. Curtis can't count.
Well, let me ask you this: what did he allegedly cover up in your mind?
I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
Sorry, but it's a little windy out here. But what did Curtis allegedly cover up in your mind?
The fact that his books were off by $1.8 billion. They knew about it in 2016. His office acknowledged it. And then he told us he didn't know about it until 2023. That's 7 years. That's unacceptable.
Why not just allow him and his staff time to fix it up versus just voting him out?
If he ain't fixed it in 7 years, he ain't going to fix it in a year and a half. He's already had the opportunity for that. That ship has sailed.
Well, let me ask you this, then. The $1.8 billion isn't real money, but isn't that just accounting errors?
It is. It's an accounting error. And here's the other thing. He didn't even know. That's how bad it was. Like, he went on record saying, yes, you can touch it. Yes, it's real. Yes, I can write you a check for it tomorrow. Yes, it's been earned interest. These were all lies. These were false statements that he made. And he even went back and deleted Facebook posts previous to 20 after when it first came up, saying that it was real when we got the report back in from Alex Partners stating that it in fact was not real. So the whole time up until January, he was telling people it was real money, and then the report comes out and goes, oh, never mind, it's just an accounting error. So he doesn't even know what it is. That's a problem on so many levels.
But let me ask you this, man. Does this sounds like it's ending up in somebody else's pocket and the treasurer just didn't want to go along with this?
It's an accounting error. We have not seen any yet. Now, I'm glad the Inspector General is looking into it. Now, I'll also say this: his office, they went out and spent $70,000 on a crisis communications outside firm to help them answer these questions. I got a problem with that expenditure. That might rise to, something that maybe we need to look at there. So it is the 1.8, the question of the 1.8, all intents and purposes, it's an accounting error based on, again, we had to spend, I think at this point, between legal fees and outside audits, I think we're well over $10 million. We spent $10 million on this fiasco, and he's been totally uncooperative and throwing out, at one point he was telling people that we should look at refunding this money back to everybody. That's, again, another piece of evidence. He can't even tell if it's an accounting error or real money. But the top line here is the guy can't count. He needs to go. We ain't going to fix this problem with the person that created the problem.
Okay. If he runs for re-election and if he wins, then does the Senate go back in and take some things out of their budget?
I don't know what we'll do at that point. Hopefully he doesn't. If the House fails to move, then, hey, we need to put some professional requirements in place. Like you've got some accounting experience. That's pretty logical, right? For somebody who's in charge of the state's treasury. The other thing, and I support this legislation, is you're probably going to see a bill passed that takes the comptroller and the treasurer, makes them statewide appointed positions. Now, the people of South Carolina will vote on that. That's a change to our Constitution. So in order for that to pass, that will be a ballot measure in 2026. And that would not take effect until 2030. So one of the solutions here is I'm in favor of allowing the people of South Carolina to vote if they want to have an appointed professional that is confirmed by the Senate for the treasurer and also the comptroller. Because what we have right now, it's a damn mess, and we can't keep going like we are.
But wasn't this allegedly caused by the former comptroller in 2017 and 2018 by putting an entry into the General Journal?
Oh yeah, I mean he's got ownership in this. The state auditor has ownership in this, but the state treasurer, it's 3 offices, and the other 2 have done the right thing. They've resigned, they've stepped away, but Curtis refuses to do. He thinks he's above the law. He thinks that him and MLK were persecuted in the same manner, which is just totally mind-boggling. Some of they for some reason they brought up Robin Mugabe, African dictator. It was almost like they're just throwing stuff against the wall in that defense to see what it was. Some of the I haven't been up there very long, but it's by far some of the weirdest stuff I've seen, and I'm hearing the same thing from a lot of legislators this session. The defense of his behavior, but that account last 3 digits 399. He is the only person that controls entries to that account. So he was an active participant. His office was an active participant in this era.
I believe, if I'm not correcting, isn't SLED also investigating in his office?
Yep.
Okay.
And SLED almost had to shut off his internet because he was threatening to release all our state accounts where all the money was, which could have been used by hackers. I mean, they were this close to pulling the kill switch on his office one day last year when he was out there threatening all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, to me, that's not somebody who wants to solve a problem. That's just somebody who wants to protect his own hide and protect his own ego.
Do you believe somebody else is protecting him?
Well, I mean, the governor is at this point. I wish the governor would step up and ask for him to step down like he did with the comptroller. The governor, I think, needs to take a more active role here in helping us right the ship.
Now, obviously, when you think about the House and obviously the Sunday resolution in regards to Curtis, if that were to occur, when you go back to that, when you go back to the Senate trying to vote him out, and they obviously didn't do that successfully, what do you think they could have done to, as far as adopting from the House, that they could have brought to the Senate to vote him out?
So, another procedure they could have done is they could have filed articles of impeachment. I believe Representative Bauer did exactly that the first week of session. So there's several different methods. Our Constitution of South Carolina gives us several different methods to remove somebody who's acted improperly in office. The route we went with was the sense of the Senate. This is another thing that he just straight up lied about. He said it's never been used before. It has been used before. You got documented evidence in 1875. Ironically, was used against the state treasurer during that time. So the sense procedure has been used before. That's what we did because the House didn't show much of indication to move on this. So from the Senate side, we took the first step. Hopefully, now that more information is coming out. Now, listen, this is our last week of session. They're not taking anything up this week. Let's be honest with that. But now that they're aware of this Inspector General investigation, maybe when they have further details about how serious this SEC investigation is, maybe the House will move at that point. But I think you will probably see an effort to amend the sine die that says explicitly, House, yes, you can take up this sense removal process at any time you want.
One last question for you, Senator. What else do you believe that the state of South Carolina or an independent firm should be doing as far as investigating Curtis Loftis' treasurer's office?
I think the right things are happening. I think, I don't want us to be under SEC investigation, but I fully understand and will offer zero defense to the current situation because he presented reports that had our books off by $1.8 billion. And that is a direct lie to our creditors with that. So therefore, our bond rating was secured with inaccurate numbers. So I totally understand why we have an SEC investigation. So it needs to happen. He screwed up big time. And hey, you and I and everybody watching this video may pay the price for that when cost of doing business because our bond rating potentially could get hit here is higher.
When do you believe this bond rating will take a hit? In the next year or two?
Could be. I don't know the SEC. That's a federal matter. They don't share day-to-day updates with us, which is totally how the process should work. So we don't know at which point they'll reach their conclusion and there'll be further action to take.
And how many reports did Curtis Loftis, the treasurer, gave to you all during his testimony?
I mean, every time he's appeared in front of the constitutional subcommittee, it's been a different report. And quite frankly, it's been a different narrative. Last year, the money was real. This year, he was saying that Alex Partners totally vindicated him, which is that's another fabrication of the truth. So, yeah, he's given us documents every time he's appeared in front of us, but it's always been a different narrative.
To be continued. State Senator Ed Sutton, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, it's so good to see you.
Likewise.